Part 4. Cosette and Marius saw each other again. What the interview was, we will not attempt to tell. There are things which we should not undertake to paint. The sun is of the number. The whole family, including Basque and Nicolette, were assembled in Marius' room when Cosette entered. She appeared on the threshold. It seemed as if she were in a cloud. Just at that instant, the grandfather was about to blow his nose. He stopped short, holding his nose in his handkerchief, and looking at Cosette above it. "Adorable!" he exclaimed. Then he blew his nose with a loud noise. Cosette was intoxicated, enraptured, startled, in heaven. She was frightened, as one can be by happiness. She stammered, quite pale, quite red, wishing to throw herself into Marius' arms, and not daring to, ashamed to show her love before all those people. We are pitiless towards happy lovers. We stay there when they have the strongest desire to be alone. They, however, have no need at all of society. With Cosette, and behind her, had entered a man with white hair, grave, smiling nevertheless, with a vague and poignant smile. This was Monsieur Fauchelevent. This was Jean Valjean. He was very well dressed, as the porter had said, in a new black suit with a white cravat. The porter was 1,000 miles from recognizing this correct bourgeois in this probable notary, the frightful corpse-bearer who had landed at his door on the evening of the 6th of June, ragged, muddy, hideous, haggard, his face masked by blood and dirt, supporting the fainting Marius in his arms. Monsieur Fauchelevent, in Marius' room, stayed near the door as if apart. He had under his arm a package similar in appearance to an octavo volume, wrapped in paper. The paper of the envelope was greenish, and seemed mouldy. "Does this gentleman always have books under his arm like that?" asked Mademoiselle Gillenormand, who did not like books, in a low voice of Nicolette.
"Well,"
answered Monsieur Gillenormand, who had heard her, in the same tone,
"he is a scholar. What then? Is it his fault?"
and bowing, he said in a loud voice,
"Monsieur Tranchelevent."
Father Gillenormand did not do this on purpose, but inattention to proper names was an aristocratic way he had.
"Monsieur Tranchelevent, I have the honor of asking you, for my grandson, Monsieur the Baron Marius Pontmercy, the hand of Mademoiselle."
Monsieur Tranchelevent bowed.
"It is done,"
said Grandfather, and turning toward Marius and Cosette, with arms extended in blessing, he cried,
"Permission to adore each other."
They did not make him say it twice. It was all the same. The cooing began. They talked low, Marius leaning on his long chair, Cosette standing near him.
"Oh my God,"
murmured Cosette.
"I see you again. It is you. It is you. For 4 months I have been dead."
"Angel," said Marius. And then, as there were spectators, they stopped, and did not say another word, contenting themselves with touching each other's hands very gently. Aunt Gillenormand witnessed with amazement this eruption of light into her aged interior. This amazement was not at all aggressive. It was not the least in the world the scandalized and envious look of an owl upon two ringdoves. It was the dull eye of a poor innocent girl of 57. It was incomplete life beholding that triumph, love. The grandfathers sat down near them, made Cosette sit down, and took their 4 hands in his old wrinkled hands.
"She is exquisite, this darling. She is a masterpiece, this Cosette. She is a very little girl and a very great lady. She will only be a baroness, that is stooping. She was born a marchioness. Hasn't she lashes for you? My children, fix it well in your noddles that you are in the right of it. Love one another, be foolish about it. Love is the foolishness of men and the wisdom of God. Adore each other only,"
added he, suddenly darkening.
"What a misfortune! This is what I am thinking of. More than half of what I have is in annuity. As long as I live, it is all well enough, but after my death, 20 years from now, my poor children, you will not have a sou. Your beautiful white hands, Madame the Baroness, will do the devil the honor to pull him by the tail."
Madame Euphrasie Fauchelevent has 600,000 francs, It was Jean Valjean's voice. He had not yet uttered a word. Nobody seemed even to remember that he was there, and he stood erect and motionless behind all these happy people.
How is Madame Euphrasia in question?
Asked the grandfather, startled.
That is me,
Answered Cosette.
600,000 francs?
Resumed Monsieur Gillenormand. Less 14 or 15,000 francs, perhaps, said Jean Valjean, and he laid on the table the package which Aunt Gillenormand had taken for a book. Jean Valjean opened the package himself. It was a bundle of banknotes. They ran through them, and they counted them. There were 500 bills of 1,000 francs, and 168 of 500. In all, 584,000 francs.
That is a good book,
said Monsieur Gillenormand. 584,000 francs, Monsieur, murmured the aunt. 584. You might call it 600,000 indeed. As for Marius and Cosette, they were looking at each other at this time. They paid little attention to this incident. Part 5. All the preparations were made for the marriage, the physician being consulted that it might take place in February. This was in December. Some ravishing weeks of perfect happiness rolled away. The least happy was not the grandfather. He would remain for a quarter of an hour at a time gazing at Cosette. Cosette and Marius had passed abruptly from the grave to paradise. There had been but little caution in the transition, and they would have been stunned had they not been dazzled. "Do you understand anything about it?" said Marius to Cosette. "No," said Cosette, "but it seems to me that the good God is caring for us." Jean Valjean did all, smoothed all, conciliated all, made all easy. He hastened towards Cosette's happiness as much as eagerness, and apparently with as much joy as Cosette herself. As he had been a mayor, he knew how to solve a delicate problem, in the secret of which he was alone. Cosette's civil state, to bluntly give her origin, who knows, that might prevent the marriage. He drew Cosette out of all difficulty. He arranged a family of dead people for her, a sure means of incurring no objection. Cosette was what remained of an extinct family. Cosette was not his daughter, but the daughter of another Fauchelevent. As for the 584,000 francs, that was a legacy left to Cosette by a dead person who desired to remain unknown. Cosette learned that she was not the daughter of that old man whom she had so long called father. He was only a relative. Another Fauchelevent was her real father. At any other time this would have broken her heart. But at this ineffable hour it was only a little shadow, a darkening, and she had so much joy that this cloud was of short duration. She had Marius. The young man came, the good man faded away. Such is life. She continued, however, to say father to Jean Valjean. Cosette, in raptures, was enthusiastic about Grandfather Gillenormand. It is true that he loaded her with madrigals and with presents. Every morning a new offering of finery from the grandfather to Cosette. Every possible furbelow blossomed out splendidly before her. It was arranged that the couple should live with the grandfather. Monsieur Gillenormand absolutely insisted upon giving them his room, the finest in the house.
"It will rejuvenate me,"
he declared.
"It is an old project. I always had the idea of making a wedding in my room."
He filled this room with a profusion of gay old furniture. Monsieur Gillenormand's library became the attorney's office which Marius required, an office being rendered necessary by the rules of the order. Part 6. The lovers saw each other every day. Cosette came with Monsieur Fauchelevent. Marius, inwardly, and in the depth of his thought, surrounded this Monsieur Fauchelevent, who was to him simply benevolent and cold, with all sorts of silent questions. There came to him at intervals doubts about his own recollections. In his memory there was a hole, a black place, an abyss scooped out by 4 months of agony. Many things were lost in it. Marius hesitated to believe that the Fauchelevent of the barricade was the same as this Fauchelevent, in flesh and in blood, so gravely seated near Cosette. The first was probably one of those nightmares coming and going within his hours of delirium. Moreover, their two natures, showing a steep front to each other, no question was possible from Marius to Monsieur Fauchelevent. The idea of it did not even occur to him. Once only Marius made an attempt. He brought the Rue de la Chanvrerie into conversation, and turning toward Monsieur Fauchelevent, he said to him, "You are well acquainted with that street?" "What street?" "The Rue de la Chanvrerie." "I have no idea of the name of that street," answered Monsieur Fauchelevent, in the most natural tone in the world. The answer, which bore upon the name of the street, and more not upon the street itself, appeared to Marius more conclusive than it was. "Decidedly," thought he, "I have been dreaming. I have had an hallucination. It was somebody who resembled him. Monsieur Fauchelevent was not there." The enchantment, great as it was, did not efface other preoccupations from Marius' mind. During the preparations for the marriage, and while waiting for the time fixed upon, he had some difficult and careful retrospective researches made. He owed gratitude on several sides. He owed some on his father's account, he owed some on his own. There was Thénardier. There was the unknown man who had brought him in, Marius, to Monsieur Gillenormand's. Marius persisted in trying to find these two men, not intending to marry, to be happy, and to forget them, and fearing lest these debts of duty, unpaid, might cast a shadow over his life, so luminous henceforth. None of the various agents whom Marius employed succeeded in finding Thénardier's track. Effacement seemed complete on that side. The Thénardiers had died in prison, pending the examination of the charge. Thénardier and his daughter Azelma, the two alone who remained of that woeful group, had plunged back into the shadow. The gulf of the social unknown had silently closed over these beings. As for the unknown man who had saved Marius, the researchers at first had some result, then stopped short. They succeeded in finding the fiacre which had brought Marius to the Rue de Fille de Calvaire on the evening of the 6th of June. The driver declared that on the 6th of June, by order of a police officer, he had been stationed from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until night on the quay of the Champs-Élysées, above the outlet of the Grand Sewer, that, about 9 o'clock in the evening, the grating of the sewer, which overlooks the river beach, was opened. That a man came out carrying another man on his shoulders, who seemed to be dead. That the officer, who was watching at that point, arrested the living man, and seized the dead man, that, on the order of the officer, he the driver received all those people into the fiacre. That they went first in the Rue de Fille de Calvaire, that they left the dead man there, that the dead man was Monsieur Marius, and that he, the driver, recognized him plainly, although he was alive this time. That they then got into his carriage again, that he whipped up his horses, that, within a few steps of the door of the archive, he had been called to stop, that there in the street he had been paid and left, and that the officer took away the other man, that he knew nothing more, that the night was very dark. Marius was lost in conjectures. He could not doubt his own identity. How did it come about, however, that falling in the Rue de la Chanvrerie, he had been picked up by the police officer on the banks of the Seine, near the bridge of the Invalides? Somebody had carried him from the quarter of the markets to the Champs-Élysées. And how? By the sewer. Unparalleled devotion. Somebody? Who? What kind of man was this? How did he look? Nobody could tell. The driver answered. The night was very dark. Basque and Nicolette, in their amazement, had only looked at the young master covered in blood. The porter, whose candle had lighted the tragic arrival of Marius, alone had noticed the man in question, and this is the description which he gave of him. This man was horrible. In the hope of deriving aid in his researches from them, Marius had preserved in his bloody clothes, which he wore when he was brought back to his grandfather's. On examining the coat, it was noticed that one skirt was oddly torn, a piece was missing. One evening, Marius spoke before Cosette and Jean Valjean of all this singular adventure, of the numberless inquiries which he had made, and of the uselessness of his efforts. The cold countenance of Monsieur Fauchelevent made him impatient. He exclaimed with a vivacity which had almost the vibration of anger: "Yes, that man, whoever he may be, was sublime. Oh, if Cosette's 600,000 francs were mine!" "They are yours," interrupted Jean Valjean. "Well," resumed Marius, "I would give them to find that man." Jean Valjean kept silence.